Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special edition of John Street Hockey. I, of course, am the mayor of John Street, Sean Campbell, joined by my buddy Kevin Curley McHugh and extra special guest. You can hear him on 97.5 The Fanatic for pregame, postgame, intermission coverage, Flyers Daily, Stick to Hockey podcast, pretty much anywhere you can listen and talk hockey, you can find this man, and that man is Jason Myrtetus. Jason, how you doing, brother?
What's going on, boys?
Good to have you back, man. We've been looking forward to this. I've been gassed up about this since we talked about it when I ran into you down at the Wells Fargo Center about a month ago.
Yeah. I mean, you know me. I'm ready to talk hockey at all and any times.
Absolutely, Kevin. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. Excited to have Jason back on, talk some hockey, getting everything.
Absolutely. Before we jump into hockey, although I guess it is kind of hockey adjacent, there has been a little bit of a Twitter war going on. And we're going to call this segment More Beef Than a Cheesesteak, presented by Hubba Hubba Hoagies. That's Hubba Hubba Hoagies, Woodburn Road, Langhorne, Pennsylvania, home of the only hoagies that make you say Hubba Hubba. Jason, you and Mark Madden.
Yeah,
you want to just give the viewers a quick synopsis here? What's going on?
I mean, I usually don't even engage with that slob, but he's just such a lonely asshole, right? And he's one of those guys that we live rent space in his head. Like, if my team was really good and the Penguins sucked, I don't give a shit about the Penguins. We let a curse, by the way.
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's fine.
Good, because I just did twice. But like, I don't care about that. I don't care about trolling their fans or anything like that. And he was grabbing anybody and anybody's tweet. First of all, searching out stuff. Not he doesn't follow these people. He just finds their tweet and then quotes tweet it with the same joke. Have you ever seen the Flyers win a cup in your lifetime? I have. I was like 3, but I have. And I know he has because he looks like he's 88, but he's probably like 45. I mean, he just looks awful. But like, I don't know if somebody told him like that joke was funny and that it was worthy of repeating, but he's just a lonely hack loser in a media market. And like, when I worked at CBS Radio, and I was there for almost 14 years, and we were looking, and I was working with the corporate office, and we were looking at a guy for a job in a major market, and his name came up, and we talked about him. And this isn't locally that we talked about. We talked about him for a place that was not Philadelphia, but a big market. And we all said the same thing. He's just a medium market talent and a blowhard. He can't survive in a real media market. So he's got to stay in that, that Pittsburgh medium-sized market and I guess be the kingfish or whale, whatever you want to call him there. But he's just an asshole. He's an embarrassment to the industry. He always has been. Like, guys in our industry have always referred to him as embarrassment. I mean, he did a written piece one time and said that he can go back to wishing that the Flyers plane would crash. I mean, it tells you the kind of righteous asshole that he is. So I usually don't engage with him, but I just wanted to point out how lonely and pathetic that fucking loser is.
Absolutely.
And he'll cite money, like how much money he makes. I'm like, dude, first, if you're going to cite money, like, you work in Pittsburgh, trust me, the money ain't that fucking great. You live in a fucking double wide. You know what I mean? Like, give me a break. He's exhausting, but we've already wasted enough on him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just one quick thing. You did mention he is a very lonely man, and that you can only attribute that to the fact that he's alienated half the city of Pittsburgh anyway.
Yeah, I mean, even his own fans hate him. They think he's an asshole.
He's the only guy that works sports radio and is like extremely open about the fact that he hates the team that he covers. Like, he hates the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he is very vocal about that. Yeah. Like, you can't tell me that doesn't alienate your fan base. But like you said, we've spent enough time.
That's all probably an act for him anyway. So. That's an act just to piss people off. I guarantee.
He's the ultimate troll.
Yeah, because he has nothing else. Troll. He has no talent. He doesn't have talent. He just comes on and says salacious and outrageous things and repeats the same bullshit over and over again. And it's why he's in that market. and he's never gotten out of a medium-sized market because he's a medium-sized market talent. And that's what they do.
Absolutely.
Well said. Very well said.
So I guess that'll bring us to our next topic here. A little bit different.
We're going to talk about Bin Laden next.
Nope, little better than that. Little tighter beard as well. We got All-Star G and the Rumor Express, and this one's presented to you by Neshaminy Creek Brewing Company, home of the official beer of John Street. That is, of course, Ice Cold John. Go pick yourself up a 6-pack anywhere fine beverages are sold. Neshaminy Creek Brewing Company, Croydon, Pennsylvania. So let's start off with G's performance in the All-Star game.
It was good.
Well, I think the only people who are really surprised by it are the people who are constantly out there, hating on him, saying that everything's his fault, with the Flyers over the past few years. I think the rest of us, I don't think we're surprised. He obviously has the skill, even though he is a little older. So, good for him. It was a nice, given that this is probably his last All-Star game as a Flyer, it was cool that he got to be the captain, regardless of the circumstances, and he balled out. That
Absolutely.
move where he just cuts back quickly on a skate for his first goal, that is so disgusting.
Yeah, it's a hard move for a goalie to deal with, too.
Yeah.
Because he's a right shot, and he's showing you backhand, and he's committed to it, and then he just a hard cut to his forehand, and he got Gibson good on that one. The thing about that goal, though, if you go back and watch it, before he gets to the net, there's a nuance play, which was fantastic. There's a stick. I forget who the defender was trying to kind of, reach around and get the puck from him, but he kind of just uses his right arm and lifts that stick off him as he's now controlling the puck with just his left hand. And it's just a little nuance play to create a little bit more space for him using his body to kind of create that. And it reminded me a little bit of that goal that he scored a couple years ago against Tampa, where he basically went 1-on-5, and then he came in on Hedman, lifted Hedman's stick while he had the puck to take that stick out of play, and then went in and scored on Vasilevsky. It was pretty ridiculous. He's still obviously very skilled. He had a good All-Star game, and, it's a shame. It's because he's still a really good player. I mean, part of the problem is that he's still their best player at 34. That's part of the problem. He's been their best player this year. I don't think he would have been if everybody was healthy. I think Couturier would have been that, but you could clearly know about 14, 15 games in, Couturier was dealing with something because he got off to a great start. He had 12 points in his first 10 games. But, I mean, I don't understand the people that can watch this team game in and game out and then insist he's the problem. Like, if you think he's the problem, like, I don't know, you may want to get a new TV. I mean, or do some homework. I mean, look at what they generate when he's on the ice and when he is not on the ice. And if you can look at that two ways. You can look at it at just the eye test, or you can look at it through advanced analytics. And they both tell you the same exact story, that when he's not on the ice, they don't generate nothing. When he's on the ice, they generate a good amount. Do they score enough? Hell no. But, I mean, if you watch the games and you think he's the problem, then I don't know what to tell people. I really don't.
Nuance, right? It comes with nuance. Like, the team hasn't been majorly successful in terms of winning for the past decade or so. And when you fire head coaches, multiple head coaches, bring new head coaches in, people, they have to still look for that guy. And when Drew has the C on his chest, he's naturally that guy that everyone looks at. But if you widen that lens a little bit and realize that the team that was built around him for many years, wasn't the best. Like, I know Michael Raffl was a fine player for us, but Michael Raffl was playing on our first line for, a couple years. Matt Reed, who had a good rookie year where he scored 20-plus goals, and then he fell off hard. He, was on the team for a long time. So it's a lot deeper than Claude Giroux.
Yeah. To me, he hasn't been the issue. It's been what's around him. And look, you can turn it, if they trade him, and I anticipate they will, there will be an effect of turning over the locker room to other guys. But are you going to be a better hockey team for it? Well, they're not good now, so it doesn't matter, right? I mean, they've been shit this year, and it's been a bad season. But I mean, he's one of those guys that, look, there's a lot of fans here in Philly that are Flyer fans but aren't hockey fans, and they may know all the Flyers throughout the history, but they don't necessarily know the game. And he's a guy that, because they don't have team success and they're so used to team success prior to the salary cap coming into the NHL, because you could buy your way to being a contender every year. But prior to that, you could do that. Now you can't. It is different. You got to build a team. And we see so many great players in this league, even before the salary cap came in, that never won anything and that never had any playoff success. And you see so many players now. I mean, you look at the Edmonton Oilers, they had 4 number 1 overall picks in 6 years. They drafted it in the top 5, I think, 7 out of 8 years. And they're probably not going to make the playoffs. They have the best player, I think, the most talented player to ever put skates on his feet in Connor McDavid. I'm not saying he's the best ever, but I think he's the most talented guy. And his team's not going to make the playoffs. Think about that. I mean, if that's not emblematic of a game that requires a team, I mean, he's also got Leon Draisaitl there.
Right.
It's not like it's him and a bunch of, Joe Blows. He's got some good players, but they don't have enough. So you got to build a team. And I think there's a lot of people that hold Claude Giroux accountable for his team, not for him. And I think that's unfortunate.
Correct. And, I think we're kind of all on the same page here. I think what was truly showcased in that All-Star game is the fact that what's been put around Claude Giroux has been the downfall of Claude Giroux. You saw what he can do with talented players around him. You're never going to have a championship team when your second best player is Jake Voracek. He's not the second best player on a championship team. But moving on from that, because we're all kind of on the same page here, along with our good friend Frankie James, as everybody knows how I feel about this. Yes, of course, you're the most vocal in G's corner. Jesse Bell checking in. How we doing, fellas? Doing great. And he says, thank God he just said that. Very ignorant fan base. And I'm not going to sit here and call out the fans, but you're definitely right, Jason. In a town where the Flyers are usually the third or fourth team, depending on our success and the success of other franchises in the city. You don't really get a lot of true hockey fans. Like you said, you get Flyers fans, and there's a huge difference. We talked about that already, of course. So moving on here, I do want to kind of throw it over, still kind of in the vein of Claude Giroux. We all know his name's being shopped around. He's more than likely going to waive his no trade clause. It's an unfortunate reality, but it is what's best for the franchise and also what is best for Claude moving forward in his pursuit of a Stanley Cup. You're hearing a lot of names thrown around there. I know the Rangers are a name that's been brought up recently, Boston as well. I don't see that working out particularly, mostly because I do see New York is kind of in a position where they're aiming for more of a depth defenseman. They do have pretty decent forwards, and I think that's the real need for that squad. And Boston, I just don't know if they have the assets that the Flyers want. They don't really have any young prospects that we could, hope to move forward with. And their draft picks, I mean, 9 times out of 10 are going to be late 20s, maybe 30. So you don't really see that. To me, I think the team that stands out is Colorado. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. What's maybe another team that you could see him going to, somebody that could really use what G brings to the table. Another team that just comes to mind for me is Minnesota. I know they could use some help up the center of the ice. G is obviously more of a winger at this point in his career, but I do think in a reduced role as, say, a third-line center, he could definitely provide some depth to that lineup. I'll go ahead and throw it over to you, Jason.
I mean, I think you got to look at. I think the Rangers are an unlikely fit as well. I think Boston could be intriguing, pending how they want to swing things. But I mean, I think the big question is, first and foremost, is if he's going to waive it. I believe he will, the no move clause. But when he waives it, how many teams and who are they that he's waiving it for? So, I mean, he's got to consider that. If it's two teams, if he's okay, I'll waive it for, Colorado and Minnesota. Okay, well, that's not as ideal as it would be if he waives it for 5 or 6 teams, where you have Colorado, Minnesota, then you have L.A., Anaheim, or maybe not Anaheim, but L.A., St. Louis would be a team that I would look at. I mean, look at a team. You got to look at the teams that think they are on the verge of really being able to do something and have the assets and flexibility in the way they can structure a deal. Because there's a couple ways the deal can go down. You can trade them for just draft capital and a first round pick. But like you said, most of the teams that, think they're going to win a cup are going to be drafting in the mid to late first round. And that's not great. I mean, you can get other things besides the draft pick. You can add a second in there, which they don't have next year, because that was part of the Ristolainen deal. So, and there's deals you can make to make it work that way, and you got to figure out how much money you're going to retain. I imagine they'll retain as much as they can, 50%, because that brings more return and gets more teams involved being able to make the deal. And, if you look at a team like Colorado, it's tough for them, even at the 50%. So, okay. I mean, the ask is a guy like Byram or a guy like Newhook. But if you can't get there, I mean, I would look at a guy like Sam Girard, who's 23 years old and has I think like a $4.5 or $5 million cap hit. He's under contract till 25, 26, if I remember right. Like okay. So they trade you Sam Girard and a pick, and you send them Giroux and you eat half the money. It's basically a wash, dollar in, dollar out. So you can, heighten your return based on that. Because I think they would be interested, whether it's Giroux or somebody else, in making a hockey deal as well that benefits them beyond this year. So I could see them acquiring a player that has term beyond this year that can help them going forward. That stuff's usually more, destined to happen in the offseason. But I think the teams you got to look out for, though, are, obviously Colorado. I know that they're absolutely talking about it. St. Louis is a team. I think the Kings are an interesting team, and I think that they feel like they're closer. I could see that. Boston, I think, is in the mix. I don't think the Rangers are. I don't think the Penguins are. I think that would be too weird for Claude. Any of the Canadian teams on that list? Perhaps. Toronto doesn't make sense there to me.
No, especially not with the cap situation.
Yeah. I mean, Calgary or Edmonton could, but usually the first 6 teams on any no trade list are the 6 Canadian markets. It's the taxes and the exchange rate and everything. But I mean, if
Edmonton and Calgary aren't that close to being cup contenders the way that they're playing this year anyway, I don't know if he'd be willing to waive his clause to go there. Our good friend Matt Rementer over on YouTube is asking maybe the Panthers is a possibility. I don't know if the money works there. I know they're and also I don't know if they want to fuck with the chemistry they got going on. I mean, that team is a wagon in the Atlantic this year.
Problem is you got to go dollar in, dollar out, and you don't want to take something off your team, because it's not a small contract. Look, it's one of the reasons why I don't think that trade deadline deals work a whole heck of a lot. They don't, because usually it's not players of Giroux's stature, number one, and number two, it's. I mean, who were the guys that were traded at the deadline and it worked out? I mean, Bobby Nystrom back in 1980 for the New York Islanders, and there's been some others, obviously, but it's not something that tends to work a tremendous amount. It gives you depth, like you saw it last year with Tampa Bay. They went out and they got David Savard, and he's playing third pair D. So you take that depth, and they were in a position because of Kucherov's LTIR, and they were able to do what they did. But I don't think you see it work out nearly as much as people think. But it is a way to kickstart your off season for teams that aren't in it and get some equity, because general managers and coaches, patience in sports is less than it's ever been. So they figure if there's a shiny toy out there that they think can help them, they're going to sacrifice some of the future, because they're probably not going to be there in 5 years anyway when that draft pick that they didn't take at 24 gets to the NHL. So they're basically saying, let the next GM deal with the fact that they don't have a pick there. Gives me a better chance now. So I think that's part of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The only
Kevin, I'll
other
throw it over to you.
speaking of like the trade deadline thing working out, the only one off the top of my head that I can think of is when Marion Hossa got traded to the Penguins the one year. I know, I mean, they ended up losing in the Cup to Detroit, but
Yeah, oh
other
wait.
than that, I can't really think of any other one. But building off of what you guys just said, I think all those teams are possibility. For me, the ideal situation would be Colorado, only because I really like Alex Newhook. If they could somehow pull that off and maybe get a pick and Alex Newhook, he's young, he's a great skater, has a quick release, really good hands, and like you watch him play. And obviously, he's not like a superstar or anything yet. He's really young, but you watch him, and he has that it factor. You know, he's able to cut quickly in tight spaces. He attacks the slot aggressively, which is really good. And then that first round pick, you know, even though it's going to be in the high 20s, you could always package that to someone. Someone's always looking for a first round pick for something. So for me, the ideal situation, if it could work out with the money, I know they're tight on the cap, but it would be Colorado.
Yeah, and Bill and I, Bill Meltzer and I talked about Newhook in today's Flyers Daily. He's a center, so he can play some wing. Um, you know, you like to be big up the middle. He's not really a big guy. I think he's only like 5'10", 5'11", just under 6 foot. He's been kind of in and out of the, playing for Colorado. I don't think he's played very many games this year. I think he's played probably like 30 games maybe for them this year so far. But he's been back to the AHL. But yeah, he's a guy that absolutely I look for because you're replacing, you're going to bring him in here and you're going to have a lot that you can do with a player like Newhook moving forward. Colorado's not going to want to get rid of him, but look, you got to give something to get something. You just don't stick out your trash bags by the curb and they drop you off a pot of gold. It's not how it works.
Well, that's the old saying. They throw you anchors, not lifelines. So
yeah, and the other thing is no general manager is going to do you any favors. Number one, number two, you look at it and look at Colorado, like how long it's been. I mean, they went through this rebuild, thought they were there under Patrick Waugh. That was a flash in the pan. Then they had to recoil again. I mean, they got to like shit or get off the pot here. Like they got to have playoff success. So if they're going to make a move, it's got to be impactful. It's got to either be a forward or a goaltender. I think they feel like they're okay in goal, but I imagine they don't feel incredibly confident about that. But I mean, when you got McKinnon, you got McCarr, you got Landeskog, you got Rantanen, you got a lot of grade A pieces there. You got to be able to get it done, and I imagine the pressure's on there to get it done.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely cup or bust for the next few years here in Colorado. So we brought up kind of moving along with younger players and, what the future of this team really is going to look like, which brings us to this segment, growing the core and identifying the core, presented by Norse Beards. If you want to grow your beard, go over to our great friends at Norse Beards. That's Norse, Norse, beards.com. Use the promo code JAWN, JAWN, for 10% off your entire order. Get your beard looking like Jason's or mine. So I want to start this one off first by identifying who we believe the core is moving forward. I think there's a little bit of there's a little bit of contradicting answers when you ask this. Some people believe that TK is going to be a part of the core moving forward. Other people think he's somebody that maybe needs a change of scenery. So first, let's start off by identifying the core.
Well, when it comes down to Travis Konechny, I think a lot of that is going to be placated off of how he finishes the year. He started the year with, I think, 4 goals in his first 5 games, if I'm not mistaken, and then just really hit a bad stretch where he went like 20 or so without a goal. It's strange because, like, when he's getting to the net, he seems to have more success. Like, when he's being, like, kind of like obviously he's not Brad Marchand to that skill level at all, but when he's playing that style, he seems to have more success, and a little bit of it, I think he's a little bit snake bitten. He's starting to shoot the puck more, at least over the last 2 games that they won. But in terms of the core, listen, Coots and Hayes are tied up for a long time, so they're not really going anywhere. So they're, by definition, part of the core. And then you look around outside that, Farabee, because he's young, obviously Carter Hart, who has outside of Claude Giroux, been the best player for the Flyers this year, rebounding very nicely. And then Atkinson's 32, having a really nice year. You could make him part of the core if you wanted to keep him beyond the next year or two. But then again, you risk having him hit that wall, kind of like Van Riemsdyk, where the production really drops off. But a lot of it is gonna depend how this year shakes out, and then even probably next year, because the free agency market going into this upcoming year isn't the best. It's the following year, 2023, that really has a lot of players in it. So that might be the year I think the Flyers have more of a shot to be as competitive as they'd like to.
Absolutely. So real quick for you, Kev, before I throw it over to Jason, I noticed you left Ivan Provorov off your list. Do you feel like he's on the outside looking in? Because I don't.
No, I was just rattling off players. Provorov, I've mentioned this before. Like, even if he's not a number one, he's someone that could be on my second D pairing all day, every day. The guy just eats minutes. He never misses games, and he may not be particularly great at any one thing, but he does everything pretty well. So yeah, for Provorov, for me, he could play on my second pair if that ends up what he is all day.
Absolutely. Jason, who do you feel is your core moving forward?
It's an impossible question to answer right now. I mean, you mentioned Couturier, that's obvious, right. And Farabee's a guy that you're obviously not looking to move. But beyond that, I mean, and Hart. But beyond that, I don't think you slam the phone down on any GM calling to ask about any of them. I don't, if somebody asks about Provorov, I mean, you don't want to. I'm not looking to trade Provorov because of a couple of reasons. One, if he has the right partner, he's been a little bit too partner dependent as a top pairing guy. At this point, maybe he should be, kind of be the one that carries it more on his own. But you do have to have a good partner, and we know what's happened the last 2 years. Niskanen retiring, and then Ellis only playing 4 games. We know what he looked like though with Niskanen. And that's a legit top pairing left side defenseman. And he can play you 28 minutes a night, anywhere north of 25. So I'm not looking to trade him. Plus, his contract, I think, is very palatable for what he can be with the right partner. Sanheim's an interesting one because he's a guy that has one more year left on his deal, and it walks him right up to unrestricted free agency. So that's an interesting one that, you got to see how that plays out. But then you look at guys like Hayes. His no movement clause expires at the end of this season, but he's not going to be a guy that is sought after because of the term, the money, and the injuries that he's dealing with. So he's obviously part of it as well. But beyond that, Travis Konechny, I think a lot of it is, how they finish off this year, how they, handle themselves playing basically more than a half a season of games that don't matter in the standings because you're not playing for the postseason. I think that can be very telling for, certain players. And I think they did shop him last year, but they decided to come back with him. And he did have the back-to-back 24-goal years. And in the second one of those, it was in 69 games. It was a 30-goal pace. But, I mean, his shooting percentage is down below 7 this year. I think he's got like 116 shots on goal. And he's just not finding the back of the net. He needs to find the net more. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I think Atkinson will be a part of it. I don't think he suffers kind of the same fate as JVR, though, just the way they're built as players. JVR never had – he was a fast skater, but he never really had that, kind of grindy game that Atkinson does have. Like, you never see JVR in a PK, No, you'll see Cam Atkinson, one of the team's best penalty killers, one of the best in the league. So – That to me, that's pretty telling. So I think Cam's going to be here, but you have to have 3 cores. You have to have a veteran core. You have to have a middle anywhere from 24 to 29-year-old core, and then you have to have a young core. You cannot have a team with all players 24 and below. Can't do it. Can't have a team with just top heavy, because in a flat cap world, you have to be able to spread the money around between different players and ELCs and all of those things. So, I think that's one of the things that, for the tear it down to the studs and rebuild it crowd, you can't do that, because if you have all these draft picks, you can't get them all to the NHL at the same time, because if all their contracts are coming up at the same time and they're having success, you can't keep them anyway. You have to have staggered age groups in your team. So What it's going to be moving forward. I mean, again, there's nobody I hang up the phone on unless it's Carter Hart, because if you don't have a goalie, you're looking for one. And I think what he has shown this year in rebounding after last year and rebounding on a team that's actually worse than last year, to me, is incredibly impressive from a mental standpoint. And he's been so good. So I think he can weather a retool, a rebuild, whatever you want to call it. So I'm not looking to trade him. And then, you got to look at what they're going to be able to accomplish hockey trade wise and what they're going to be able to accomplish via free agency and how active they're going to be in it. I do target the 23 draft and I target the 23 free agency class as well. I do some things this offseason to put me in a position to better have success in both of those areas.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Like you said, I think there's a ton of guys that you're not necessarily actively shopping, but you'll listen to offers on them, whether you're actively shopping them or not. This is a league where obviously anybody can be traded. The greatest player of all time, Wayne Gretzky, was traded.
Yeah, if somebody offers me like if somebody calls and offers me some incredible package for Joel Farabee, and it's a center or a top defenseman, then yeah, I got to look at it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'd be
Especially in a league now where those positions have more value than they've ever had,
and more value than a winger.
Correct.
So
100%. Like you said, Carter Hart is absolutely untouchable. This franchise, no matter who's been, kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes, has never really been able to find that goalie, especially not a homegrown one. There's been so many swings and misses in free agency, tons of young guys that just haven't panned out, and you finally have the guy. In my mind, you don't let him go for anything. I think we're all pretty consistent here. The core really is Carter Hart, Ivan Provorov, Joel Farabee, Kevin Hayes, Sean Couturier. But again, I'm taking offers on those guys as well. Not actively shopping them, but I'm not hanging up the phone either.
Yeah, I floated a scenario by Bill Meltzer. It was kind of off the cuff, but basically dollar in, dollar out. Even if the cup goes up $1 million or the cap goes up $1 million this year, and I just said, once Toronto fails again in the playoffs and gets knocked out in the first round, then I call up Toronto and I call up Kyle Dubas if he's still the GM at that point. He wouldn't be if I was there, but I call him up and I say, you need to get Mitchell Marner out of town. I said, I got a deal for you that's going to match the money. Ivan Provorov and Travis Konechny. You send me Marner. And Bill said, okay, I'm intrigued, but now I got a big opening on my left side top pair. And I said, not anymore, because I'm going to trade Travis Sanheim and a number 1 draft pick to Arizona, and I'm going to get Jacob Chikrin. So now all of a sudden, I've got Jacob Chikrin and Ryan Ellis as my top pair. I have Mitch Marner as my number 1 line center. And I have Sean Couturier as a number 2 line center. So now I'm all of a sudden, I'm a better team. And I got a player that's electric that will put asses in seats and eyeballs on televisions and will get your butt out of the seat. Like, Couturier's a great player, but he's not an electric player. Marner's an electric player.
And I'll tell you what I love about that scenario. It establishes depth up the middle of the ice.
Mm-hmm. Slots everybody.
It's something that we've seen time and time again work in this league. I hate to bring them up as an example, but they're probably the best example of it. The Pittsburgh Penguins for so many years have been built through the center ice position. They've been so deep. And you set those 2 guys in as your top 2 centers. All of a sudden, Kevin Hayes is your 3rd line center.
Yeah. Where he should be playing.
Correct.
Yep. And he's not necessarily a shutdown 3rd line center, because that's not what he's great at. But you have some of that with Couturier already. And it just slots everything better. And you got to be – it's the only flaw I see in the Rangers is they have too many wingers, not enough centers. You need to be big and strong up the middle of the ice. And that's the one thing about the Rangers that I fear for them, if I actually gave a shit. But that's the one thing. You can't just be chock full of wingers. You're going to have to use some of those wingers and get a center in there. But yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer in it, and I think Marner out of Toronto, he puts up great numbers. He's obviously incredibly talented, getting paid a ton of money, but I'd be happy to have him.
Absolutely. I
I think
think
Jacob. Gosh, Sean, good. You're good.
I was going to say I think we're kind of all in agreement there, and like you said, he's a guy that's going to sell some tickets, get the fans excited, and maybe get this fan base bought back in, get the
Hmm.
paper bags off of the Twitter avatars.
Yeah,
I mean, talk about Jacob Chikrin. Like the Arizona Coyotes are playing in the ASU stadium with 5,000 seats. Like Chikrin isn't. I think is very uh, realistic in terms of like a player who you could go get. Who, you know, the Arizona Coyotes. They kind of are tanking this year in every sense of the word. You know, some of the players that they
perpetual
have on their
tank.
team, yeah, like Andrew
Perpetual
Ladd,
unintentional thinking.
yeah, like Andrew Ladd, like he's not probably not an NHL player anymore. They, they got a couple, can't remember off the top of my head over there as well. So
Yeah,
Jacob,
Ghost. He's not an NHL player
yeah,
either. Not on a good team.
no,
No,
and he's very gettable if you were to make that commitment to go get him.
Yeah.
absolutely. So I know we're kind of running tight on time with you here, Jason. So I want to run through these last couple of segments with you. Um, Who you got? Presented by Pike's Pub, 2nd Street Pike Plaza, Southampton, Pennsylvania, home of the coldest beers in Southampton. You need somewhere to go to watch the Super Bowl. You need somewhere to go to watch any sporting event, or just kick back, relax, and drink a cold one. Head out to Pike's Pub. Go see Maddie and Angel, the best bartenders in the biz. That's Pike's Pub, 2nd Street Pike Plaza, Southampton, Pennsylvania. This segment's going to be called "Who You Got?" And the reason I ask who you got is because I want to know who you're going to be ISO camming moving forward. Obviously, playoffs are out of the question. We're going to be seeing a lot of young guys come up. For some of these guys, it's their last chance at making an impression in the organization. Some of these guys are trying to get tape out so other organizations will make a move for them. A lot of them are kind of like depth pieces. The Flyers do a pretty solid job at acquiring guys who could be bottom six forwards. You're seeing that with a lot of the guys that are being called up. Um, I think a few of them have a chance at maybe being moved out this off season. They're trying to showcase themselves, and I'm wondering who you're locking in on. What's a guy that you're going to be ISO camming? You're going to be championing him. For example, me, I'm an Isaac Ratcliffe guy. Normally, he makes me look like a donkey, but the last 2 games, he's made me proud. Not in the score column, but he's getting under people's skin. He's pissing people off. And, that's what you kind of got to do to establish yourself as a young guy who's possibly on his last chance with the big club. So, Kevin, I'll throw it over to you. Who's your guy?
Well, I think with the most potential, especially because he plays center and would be the biggest help for us if he actually if he started to come through is Morgan Frost. I think we talked about this on our last show. That line with him, Willman, and Mayhew seems to have a really good chemistry. I've really enjoyed. They've probably been the thing I've enjoyed watching the most over the past week or so. I said this last show, but they play with a lot of speed, especially Willman and Mayhew. They're dogs on the puck, and then Frost has been he seemed more patient in the offensive zone. He's been looks like he's been holding on to the puck a little longer to find a guy streaking in. Coming.
And he's frozen. Oh man, he was on a little bit of a run there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's running out of the room and coming back in. So I'll throw it over to you, Jason.
I mean, Cam York's obviously one of them. A guy
Absolutely. I
that,
forgot to mention him in my core as well. I feel like he's going to be a huge part of this team moving forward.
yeah, I mean, I think watching him down the stretch he's gonna make mistakes, but I'd rather him make them now when the team's not battling for a playoff position.
Correct. And
Um,
I think he's going to be a key piece for that for the leadership group as far as the young guys are concerned.
yeah,
You,
he's
you
such a
saw what he was
chill
able to
guy.
bring to the junior program last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a chill guy, so laid back. I think he just makes smart plays on the ice. I don't think he tries to do too much. So he's going to be one. Frost obviously is going to be one too. because the last 5 games that he's played really well, and he's getting better and better. And it's about that period where you thought that his game should start clicking now because he missed so much time with the injury and the pandemic initially, all that stuff. So those two for sure. And then you got to see who else they pull up. I mean, we're going to see Zamula again, possibly. What other guys could get put up? Lita Sandine, could he get pulled up again? No, he doesn't excite the hell out of me or anything, but to me, it's probably Frost and Cam York are the two. And I think they're going to end up trading Martin Jones, and I wouldn't mind getting a little bit more look at Felix Sandstrom as well. I mean, Carter Hart's the guy, but we saw Sandstrom. He played pretty spectacularly in that game that he played. I think he had 44 saves. So that's another guy. I mean, you can't have enough depth at goaltending. So that's another guy that I want to keep an eye on. I mean, maybe you see Ustimenko or Urson at some point this year too in that. But the three I would focus on, though, are York, Frost, and probably Felix Sandstrom.
Absolutely. You bring up Morgan Frost there, and just real quick, I kind of want to drop this on you. I look at Morgan Frost, and I'm reminded of an interview I heard recently on Spit and Chicklets with Anaheim Duck Troy Terry. And he mentioned how his first few call-ups to the NHL, he was so focused on trying to stay in the NHL. If he had a turnover on his first shift, he's gripping the stick too tight for the rest of the game and, trying to make up for that mistake instead of just playing his game. And I think what you're seeing now from Morgan Frost is a guy who feels more free to play his game now. In the call-ups that he's had in the past, it's been 2, 3, 4 game stints. He hasn't really had a chance to, get acclimated to the NHL and build that freedom and that confidence to know, hey, I can play my game and I'm not going to be sitting on the end of the bench for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. And Troy Terry, voicing that's it's interesting, and I think it's true that I think you need to just tell him you're going to be here the rest of the year. Oddly enough, I don't think he's going to be recalled on Wednesday. I don't think he or York will be. So they're both, I think, in the lineup tomorrow for the Phantoms, and I'm not sure that they'll be in the lineup for the Flyers on Wednesday, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I say just go out and play. Stop thinking.
Absolutely.
Stop trying to do too much. Take what comes to you, because the NHL, it's not easy. Like, it's the most unforgiving league in the world, and you got to realize the little things you have to do with and without the puck to have success. And if you don't do them, then you're not going to last very long. But this is a nice chunk here for them to be able to really get a look at him and see if he can develop a rhythm at the NHL. Last 5 games for him have been really good. He needs to keep building on it, though.
Exactly. And the only way you're going to pick up those little nuances of the game is to play at the NHL level and play consistently.
Yeah, can't learn them in the AHL.
Minutes. Absolutely. Kev, you were kind of cut off by your internet connection there. So who you got?
I was talking about Morgan Frost and how much I enjoyed watching him play with Willman and Mayhew and their chemistry that they've shown, and just his play over the recent week or so. Obviously, Isaac Ratcliffe. I love seeing that big guy who can get in there and bang bodies. He's still young. He's only 22. But I think he could develop into a useful player. What his ceiling is, I don't know. And then obviously Cam York. So probably mainly Cam York and Morgan Frost, because it's kind of their turn in terms of young guys who are ready to come up and get their opportunity. Because outside of those two, who do you look at? Maybe Zamula. Jason mentioned Sandstrom, and then outside of that, I think Forster's still a little while away. So is Wisdom, who is now back playing for his team. He actually plays with Shane Wright, oddly enough. So yeah, for me, I'd say Frost and Cam.
Absolutely. Just one more thing on Isaac Ratcliffe before we move on for our final segment with Jason. I know we're hanging on to you a little bit longer than we spoke about. I appreciate you hanging in with us. Isaac Ratcliffe is a guy, we wondered what his ceiling could be. I think ideally he's a player like Wayne Simmons or Mike Knuble, and I think the more he learns to throw that big body and that large frame of his around, the closer he'll get to that. So moving on, the week ahead. So we got 3 games this week, home and home with Detroit and obviously the Penguins. Um, I said it on Flyers Alley when I guest starred with them guys yesterday. I got us going 2-1. I see a split with Detroit, and I'll take the Flyers to beat the Penguins every game, regardless of whether I look like an idiot at the end of it or not. These are two teams that hate each other, throw the records out the window. We've seen crazier things happen when the Flyers and Penguins play. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on the week ahead, maybe some predictions.
I'd go 1-2. I think maybe we still have some momentum and we come home against Detroit and take care of business there. Haven't been a very good road team. Probably lose on the road to Detroit, and then when it comes to teams like Pittsburgh, we have Washington after that. After that, then Carolina. When it comes to those teams, like maybe it can be fun and we can compete, but I just think overall, especially with the injuries, we're just severely outmatched against teams like Pittsburgh. I don't see us winning that game.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see it either. That team's really good right now and playing well. We'll see everybody comes back from the break. But yeah, Detroit, they should beat Detroit at home. You got to win at home against Detroit, and then you win 3 straight. It's been nice having the break though, because they won 2 straight. We've been able to enjoy it a little bit without having to get screwed up with another game and a loss. But yeah, so I mean, it's not a heavy week of hockey. The whole month's really not that heavy, even with the rescheduled games. And then after you get that Pittsburgh game in next week, then you're looking at 4 to close out at home, to close out against at Wells Fargo, and then open up March with 4 8-game homestand. But the opponents that you see in that stretch are not easy. I mean, you get Washington twice before the end of the month, and then Carolina and St. Louis sandwiched in between those games. Then you get Edmonton, Minnesota, Chicago, and Vegas. It's a tough stretch. It's a tough 8 games at home against. I mean, the only team really that you're looking at and go, okay, not very good, is probably Chicago and maybe Edmonton. But Edmonton's still got 2 of the most dynamic players on the planet. So, but yeah, I mean, you had the home and home with Detroit. You got to take care of both ends of that if you can.
Absolutely. Like I said, that Pittsburgh pick for me is more or less my orange shaded glasses. I will never pick the Penguins to win a game. Maybe that'll be to my downfall, but at least I'm not putting any money on it. That's for damn sure. So final segment, final thoughts, last call. Anything you wanted to say earlier on in the podcast you couldn't get out because of the flow. Maybe what you got going on later this week, whatever's on your mind, let it all out.
I think I said this a little bit last show as well. Just enjoy watching the rest of Claude Giroux's time here, man, because it could end up being like a lot of people had a lot of negative feelings towards Donovan McNabb towards the end of his run here, and then once he finally left, before we were fortunate enough to get Michael Vick, it was kind of like, wow, we kind of like really missed Donovan McNabb. Didn't really, kind of forgot what we had. And I feel like the same could be said for when Giroux leaves. A lot of people rag on him, but once he's gone, it's like, when are we going to get another Claude Giroux coming through here? It doesn't happen often, So just enjoy watching him play, because I don't know, he's one of the greatest Flyers of all time. So that's just how I feel about him. That's my boy.
Appreciate what you got while you got it. Jason, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because we're not going to get a lot of warning. It's going to be, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to see alert on your phone that Claude Giroux's been traded. You're not going to get this, oh, okay, he's going to be traded. We can go see him one game at Wells Fargo tonight. Like, it doesn't work like that. And he's been done everything he could. He's earned the stature in the organization that he's got. I mean, that's one thing for me. And then, just try and figure out for everybody for their own sanity about, you can change your expectations in sports. That's allowed. Just because you had a preseason expectation doesn't mean you need to stick to that expectation throughout, because obviously it's changed. But just find a way to get some enjoyment and get some positives out of what remains here this season, whether that's with the way the deals go down at the deadline, by the deadline, or whether that's with seeing players take next steps in their growth. So otherwise you can drive yourself crazy. I mean, like, I had somebody DM me and mention it, and because I went on a riff about, I'm going to do the podcast every day, and I'm not going to come in and I'm not going to scream and yell, and this guy needs to be fired. They need to trade this guy. They need to tear it down every day. because I don't want to hate the team. There's still the team that everybody roots for here, and I understand there's a time and a place for that. Sometimes it's not what I do. I try and remove emotion from it and be a little bit more analytical. But and there's sometimes when I get caught up and I just get so pissed off that I do that. But I want them to turn it around, and they got to figure out their identity to do it, what they want to be, and be it. And don't make decisions based on the bloodthirst and timeline of a fan base. Make the best. Like, I go back and I look at what Colorado did when they were trading Ryan O'Reilly. It seemed like 3 years. And I look what, a team like Buffalo did with Eichel. Everybody wanted him traded way before that. But sometimes the right move takes a lot of time. And you got to look at that. And like when O'Reilly ended up going to Buffalo, I mean, Colorado got a haul in that deal because they waited and they didn't just say, let's get him out of here like Ben Simmons. It takes time. And, you can't just microwave a rebuild. You can't microwave young players. We don't pop them in the microwave like a cup of soup or a cup of noodles, whatever those shit things are, right? And have it ready in 60 seconds. If you do that, you get a player that's cup of noodles and tastes like shit. Sometimes you got to slow roast. You know what I mean? You got to marinate and all that. You can't microwave it. It's unfortunate that you can't, but you can't. And they got to be, Chuck Fletcher and the hockey ops staff has to remove emotion from the equation, and they have to make the right moves, not the moves just to placate an angry fan base. And it's angry right now, and fuck, it should be, because this shouldn't happen. But it did. So don't compound it by feeding the bloodthirst and making moves to make moves. Make the right moves. Decide what your team's going to be, what you want it to be, and how you're going to build it, and hire the right coach for that team. Because that coach could be somebody different. If it's a young team and you're retooling with a youth movement, then there's certain coaches that fit the bill. If it's a mid-level and veteran team and you're trying to win quickly, then John Tortorella may be your guy. But don't have the youth with John Tortorella. It won't work. Exactly. So you got to figure out what you are, what you want to be, what your DNA is going forward, and be it, and then hire the right pieces to get the most out of what you've built. To me, that's the biggest key.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. So with that being said, I'm just going to piggyback off of what you just said, Jason. You cannot microwave it. That is the best way to put it. The best wines, the best whiskeys, and the finest of cheeses take time. They're aged. They're seasoned properly. And in this particular instance, I think hockey players are the same way. And I think that's a systemic problem across hockey. We expect so much from our young players, from our first round draft picks. We expect them to be NHL ready at 17 and a half, 18 years old. We expect them to come in and produce. And I'm sorry, but not everybody is Connor McDavid. Jack Eichel, one of the best prospects in recent memory. He struggled a little bit out of the gate as well. Jack Hughes is finally starting to come into his own. So to expect these young players to be who they're going to be in 5 years from day one is just irresponsible. And you also mentioned the bloodthirst of the fans and making the right moves and not making rash decisions. And the only thing I can say to that is don't turn yourselves into the Dallas Cowboys. Don't make hair trigger decisions that you're going to regret when you wake up tomorrow. Don't hire Mike McCarthy when you know he doesn't know when to use a timeout. Make the right moves, make the right decisions. And for the love of God, this is what I've been asking for so long. Just be a smart franchise. Be a smart hockey team. Make the proper moves on the fringes and build the right way. Don't just try and buy your way to a Stanley Cup, especially in a salary cap league, as you alluded to earlier, Jason. that's going to close it out for tonight's episode. Jason, you've been so kind with your time. Our friend Matt Rementer checks back in. He says, "Great show, boys. Myrtetus is awesome." Couldn't agree more. You certainly are awesome, and you've been awesome with your time. So generous. We appreciate having you on. You're welcome back anytime. The people love it. We love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime, guys.
Thanks, Jason.
Anytime.
Take it easy.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that's going to do it for our interview with Jason Myrtetus. And that's going to do it for the podcast. It's time to do a little bit of a wrap here. As always, don't forget to check out our awesome sponsors. We absolutely could not do this show without them. Norse Beards, NORSEbeards.com, promo code John, 10% off your entire order. Get your beard looking like mine or Jason Myrtetus's. Don't walk around with a baby face like Kev anymore with our friends at Norse Beards.
Don't be mad because I'm handsome.
You're looking for something to sip on while you listen to your favorite episode of John Street Hockey or watch the Flyers take on the Red Wings in the next couple of days here. Check out our friends at Neshaminy Creek Brewing Company. Get yourself a nice cold 6-pack of John or any of the other fine selections from Neshaminy Creek Brewing Company. Available anywhere fine beverages are sold. Hubba Hubba Hoagies on Woodburn Road, Langhorne, Pennsylvania. Home of the only hoagies that make you say Hubba Hubba. And last but certainly not least, our good friends over at Pike's Pub in Pike Plaza, 2nd Street Pike, Southampton, Pennsylvania. Coldest beers in Southampton. Tons of TVs to watch all your favorite sporting events. They got dartboards. They got diamond billiard tables. I'm a huge pool shooter. If any of you guys are as well, you know that diamond tables are the absolute best. And you don't see them in a bar all that often. So want to have some beers, shoot some pool, go check out our friends over at Pike's Pub. We appreciate the hell out of everybody for rocking with us, hanging with us, checking in live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Don't forget to be a friend, tell a friend about the best hockey talk in the city of Philadelphia and beyond. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review. We're out.
Bye, everyone.